Okay guys, we're going to Math 3, Transformations of Functions. We're going to kind of run through this pretty quickly. I encourage you to hit pause anytime you need to and kind of back up and down. Remember, this is the second time we've seen this, second year, so it's kind of a review. First thing I do is just kind of recognize what the parent function is. For this graph, the parent function here is, whoa, slow down, sorry. Parent function is the absolute value. And then what we did was we graphed that in the calculator. We realized that everything was exactly 3y units lower. 3y units lower. So we reminded ourselves that when we add or subtract on the outside of a function, for example right here, plus or minus k is on the outside of the function, then it's a vertical slide. In other words, it's a translation. It's a slide up and down. Now at the bottom, we would notice the difference between f of adding a number on the inside of parentheses on the inside of the function as opposed to the original problem, which was adding it on the outside. When we added on the inside down here, we used our calculator to graph this, and we realized what happened is we realized that it will move left and right. So the parent function was y equals x squared. And again, I encourage you to look back and see how that graphed and how that happened. And we recognize that if we add on the inside, it actually moves left. If we subtract on the inside, it moves to the right. Okay. We realize that we can do these things in combinations of each other. So the parent graph of this one is the absolute value. We recognize that. And we've got to figure out which one to do first. And just like the order of operations, we're going to start on the inside first. So we're going to move to the right 2 because it's on the inside. So subtract 2 would be to the right 2. And then we're going to do what's on the outside, which is going to be moved down 1.
Dawson Gooch, could you come to the office, please? Dawson Gooch, please come to the front office. Thank you.
All right. Here we're watching what happens when we have a negative on the outside versus a negative on the inside. And again, we used our calculator to see the difference of these, and we graphed them, and we ended up noticing that when you have a negative on the outside, it flips over the x-axis. And again, right there you can see where it's flipping over the x-axis. And when we're on the inside, here's a different parent function. We're going to get a vertical flip, or a vertical reflection. So again, I know that graphs very quickly, but you can see the symmetry there. You can have combinations of things that happen at the same time. So again, start on the inside with what you're going to do first. Parent function is the absolute value, so we're going to move to the right 1 because that's on the inside. We always work on the inside out. And then secondly, we'll do the reflection. Alright, so I showed it in steps. You can see in red, the first thing I did was I went ahead and moved everything to the right 1. And then, instead of drawing that graph, I took those points and reflected them. And you can see where they came up with that. Now, we used our calculator a lot to watch what was going on with these, but what we were looking for was what happens when you multiply a function times a number on the outside. And it depends on what kind of number it is. If the number is bigger than 1, it'll end up doing a vertical compression. In other words, it'll squeeze from this side and from this side. All those values will squeeze in. Notice how these values here squeezed in, and this one squeezed in. And what happens, it's a vertical compression. Okay. Now on the other side, if you're multiplying it by a number that's a proper fraction, in other words, it's between 0 and 1, then what happens is you end up getting numbers that squeeze out, or not squeeze out, but expand outward. So you can see where all of these would just expand outward, and that's the difference. Now that's if you multiply with a number on the outside. If you multiply by a number on the inside, everything is completely backwards from that. Alright, I know that was super fast, but if you'll take your time to hit pause and kind of watch that happen again, you can see what's going on. Got any questions? Ask me in class.